Quickly on to the Biden address yesterday. Biden, wistful but proud, it would seem. He spoke from the Oval Office. He was talking about a lot of his achievements. I think the sense that I got was the idea somehow that I've done a lot and I could do more is what I was getting. That was the, I thought, distinct implication. But it's time for me to turn the page. So it was an important speech. Probably not everyone was happy with it. Maybe they would have liked a more detailed recounting of what he was thinking as he stepped back. But I don't think you're going to get that. I think the speech he gave is exactly the speech I would have anticipated him giving. Here's a little bit of a summary of the speech from last night.
I revere this office, but I love my country more.
In a historic Oval Office address, President Biden detailing the most consequential decision of his lengthy political career.
It's been the honor of my life to serve as your president. But in the defense of democracy, which is at stake, I think it's more important than any title.
It comes less than a month after a poor debate performance and pressure from Democrats led him to drop out of the race.
Have you heard about Ted's?
No? Is that it, Albert? That's all you've got?
No, it's just there's an ad
bailed?
that played.
Something happened?
Here we go.
Oh.
My record as president, my leadership in the world, my vision for America's future, all merited a second term. But nothing can come in the way of saving our democracy. That includes personal ambition.
The president insisting the best way forward to pass the torch to a new generation.
There's also a time and a place for new voices, fresh voices, yes, younger voices. And that time and place is now.
President Biden praising Kamala Harris, who he endorsed this week.
She's experienced, she's tough, she's capable. She's been an incredible partner to me and a leader for our country.
Watching from inside the Oval Office, the president's family appearing to comfort him afterwards. The First Lady later sharing this handwritten note on social media, thanking those who never wavered and encouraging her husband's supporters to now put that trust in Harris. The vice president in Houston this morning to deliver a speech to the nation's largest teachers union. On Wednesday in Indianapolis, she vowed to fight for reproductive rights.
And when I am president of the United States, and when Congress passes a law to restore those freedoms, I will sign it into law.
Harris could be close to another high-profile endorsement from former President Obama. 4 people familiar with the discussions tell NBC News he's expected to throw his weight behind her soon. All of it as Harris is facing an August 7th deadline to name a running mate. Among the top contenders, Arizona Senator Mark Kelly.
Would you accept it?
Again, this is not about me.
And Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro.
She kicked butt and she earned the support and she earned the nomination, and I'm proud to support her.
Thank you, Albert. That is essentially both the summary on the remarks last night by the president and also, of course, the continuing anticipation of her appointment for number 2 on the ticket. I saw a couple of comments that I thought were worthy of repeating, one of which I think is kind of accurate, and you may not want to admit this because I know a lot of you are big Biden backers there, and I certainly would back his record as president, but I would not back his desire to run for another term, and I think a lot of us were looking the other way or, downplaying or wanting to believe maybe what we were hearing about his mental acuity. I'm not suggesting even that his mental acuity is, off that much. But let's face it, the guy does seem feeble and weak. And here it is. Randy says he appeared weak and somewhat feeble. That's exactly right. A big issue now seems to be how much authority or responsibility Harris was given regarding the border. Was she the border czar or wasn't she? Or somewhere in between? Well, first of all, calling her the border czar, I don't know that she was ever called the border czar, but whatever the title is, it could, as you've sort of suggested in your comment, it could be legit, that she has a lot of power, or it could be ceremonial, which is probably what it is. I don't know really what anyone can do at the border without congressional legislation or executive order of the sort that we've seen from Joe Biden recently. You had congressional legislation, but it was hobbled by Donald Trump. I mean, in essence, that would have given you so many more immigration judges, so much more protection at the border. It really would have been the kind of thing. Well, the GOP essentially authored the bill, and then they didn't pass their own bill because their Lord and Savior said, don't pass it. And he said, don't pass it unapologetically for political reasons. You know, the border is still a political cudgel that we can use to play against the Democrats. That was his view, and it is right. He's correct. The more trouble there is in America, the more you can say, look at all the trouble in America. So there you have it. And Doug says, build the wall? Yeah, build the wall. You want to have the same contractors build the wall, Doug, that built it last time? Those are just donors to Donald Trump. The biggest donors to Donald Trump got the wall contracts, and at least one of them had never built anything before. He was just given this $45 million contract. And by the way, his part of the wall cost, I want to say it was multiples of what any other part of the wall cost. The wall construction became just another handout that Donald Trump gave his major donors. So what has to happen at the border is happening on some level, but there also have to be many more immigration judges, and there has to be new immigration policy. We have to change the policy. We may even, sadly, as I've noted before, have to change the asylum provisions in this country. So the other side of town involves Trump and him gasping for media oxygen. It's kind of funny that Donald Trump is not in the news cycle quite the way he was. Now, that said, he still has ramped up the hate machine and has it going pretty well. You have that video, Albert, that I passed on to you? There's a Trump, here he is, a Trump rally, and he talks, Trump and Vance are really, turning on the blowtorch, which has worked for them, to be fair, to this point. Here's a little bit.
Facing a new political landscape, Donald Trump holding nothing back, attacking his White House successor overnight. On social media, slamming President Biden's primetime address, calling it, quote, barely understandable and so bad. And earlier, at his first rally since Mr. Biden dropped out of the race,
3 days ago, we officially defeated the worst president in the history of our country.
The former president also shifting focus to the Democrats' new de facto nominee, Vice President Harris.
Kamala, you're fired. Get out of here.
Trying to tie her to Biden policies on immigration and inflation.
Lion Kamala Harris has been the ultra-liberal driving force behind every single Biden catastrophe.
Mr. Trump also joking about shedding the more unifying tone he attempted to strike at last week's Republican National Convention.
I was supposed to be nice. They say something happened to me when I got shot. I became nice. And when you're dealing with these people, they're very dangerous people. You can't be too nice.
It comes as the former president's running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, is in the spotlight for some of his past comments on parenthood, including this speech in 2021.
When you go to the polls in this country as a parent, you should have more of an ability to speak your voice in our democratic republic than people who don't have kids.
And this from the same year drawing the most attention, referring to Harris and other prominent Democrats.
We're effectively run in this country by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives.
The backlash coming from the political world to even Hollywood. Jennifer Aniston posting she, quote, truly can't believe the comments. And now Kirsten Emhoff, the ex-wife of Harris's husband, Doug Emhoff, writing, for over 10 years, Kamala has been a co-parent with Doug and I. She's loving, nurturing, fiercely protective, and always present.
So there you have it. I mean, look, it's a bull in a china shop with Trump and with J.D. Vance also. But J.D. Vance, I'll remind you, was when he appointed J.D. Vance or decided on J.D. Vance and brought him on as the nominee number 2 on the ticket, my thought was, and I shared it with you that day, he's really feeling confident, because typically you'll bring somebody on for a lot of reasons that have to do with political expediency. They're going to carry a state. They may balance the ticket just philosophically. They may just have a softer tone. Look at Mike Pence. Perfect for Donald Trump. Trump's the flamethrower. Pence is the guy from Central Casting that you might actually put in as vice president, right? Quiet, loyal, all of those things. J.D. Vance is none of those things. J.D. Vance is, he's a frat boy in a sense in terms of his rhetoric, because it's reckless, and he's out there with some of the most extreme rhetoric that you could imagine. So when Trump settled on him, I thought, wow, Trump really feels as though he doesn't need anybody to balance him. He just needs a young guy who can be out there and a flamethrower like he is. But the other thing is that you'll remember the J.D. Vance selection was championed by Peter Thiel, who is a huge supporter of Vance. He essentially, I think, is responsible for the rise of J.D. Vance. Hired him at 2 or 3 of his companies, and then completely funded his senatorial race. Gave him $15 million to get started. So you've got in that push, you've got the kind of thing that propelled Donald Trump toward J.D. Vance. Add to that little Don Trump, little Don Jr., and Eric. Yeah, the boys. They were both pushing J.D. Vance. And so now Donald Trump has J.D. Vance. Now, it may all work out for him, but the reality is that J.D. Vance has become reckless and has always been this guy, abortion without exceptions, not acceptable under any circumstances. He's always been this guy with hearkening back to ultra right-wing, quote, traditional roots for women. He has misogynist views. And you realize that he really may be ultimately a net loser for Donald Trump to be on the ticket. Trump himself, he's not caught by surprise. There's this sense like, they just never thought that Kamala Harris would be who they'd be running against. Really? They didn't? There were rumblings for quite some time on the Democratic side that it might be Kamala, right? They wanted Biden out for a long time. Finally, Biden steps back, and they were spring-loaded, were the right-wing Oppo people, with stuff on Kamala Harris. Thank you, Doug, for a $5 super sticker, by the way. Thank you.
Big shout
As
out.
a crowd-funded show, we like to give the shout-outs to people who fund us, so thank you. But Trump was not unprepared in reporting from Maggie Haberman. They had planned for the possibility of Mr. Biden's dropping out. There you go. They produced anti-Harris videos and tested her vulnerabilities in private polls. They were a bit surprised when Biden actually did it, they say. Some of Mr. Trump's advisories thought he seemed too stubborn, too Irish, one aide said, to buckle to the pressure to quit a race against a man he viscerally hated, viscerally is a ding word, and believed he was best positioned to defeat. And they were caught off guard, they say, in this piece from Haberman and colleagues at the Times. They were caught off guard by the speed and ruthless efficiency of the replacement. They figured that if he did quit, Democrats would have to stumble through at least a few weeks of turmoil as ambitious Democrats jostled for their shot at the national stage. What did we say on this show? We said there would never be any contesting of the nomination. No one would go up against Kamala Harris. Said that from the very first second, right? We talked about that. Newsom, whoever you view as relevant. And now all of those relevant people are being looked at as number 2 on the ticket, right? But it's funny that the Republicans thought that there would be this scramble for top of ticket. But within 24 hours, they say, Democratic leaders unofficially crowned Ms. Harris and stamped out any notable opposition. She won endorsements from nearly every Democrat of any note, earned support from enough pledged convention delegates. to avoid serious challenges and was immediately on television prosecuting the case against Mr. Trump. So this whole thing has kind of taken on a kind of warp speed, and that's a little bit on JD and Trump. The Jennifer Aniston slamming JD Vance over the childless cat lady remark is just great. I mean, why would you, this idea somehow that if you don't have kids, you don't have skin in the game, you don't have a stake in the future of America, it's disgusting. It's the most grotesque thing. It's a kind of superiority, and it's as though it's reversed engineered. You know, you decide this is the conclusion. Family is what I'm going to emphasize. And now I'm going to get there in this perverse way where I dump on everybody who doesn't have kids. Jennifer Aniston sent a stark message to Trump vice presidential pick J.D. Vance on Wednesday over his comment that the U.S. is run by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made. It's just a basic fact, he said. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats controlled by people without children, he said. I truly can't believe this is coming from a potential VP of the United States, Aniston wrote. All I can say is, Mr. Vance, I pray that your daughter is fortunate enough to bear children of her own one day. I hope she will not need to turn to IVF as a second option. Because if you're trying to take that away from her also, it was a challenging road, the baby-making road, she said. There are 2 points. First of all, it is a challenging road. And IVF, he does want to take away, as you know. But the other thing is, not everybody wants to have kids. And there's nothing wrong with that. Why is that all of a sudden a litmus test for anything? So I don't know what you do with stuff like that. These are comments that are a couple of years old. He's going to have to clean them up. Do you have his original comments, Albert? Did I send them to you? He was on with Tucker Carlson, I think.
I have
said
it.
Mm-hmm. He said it. I'll play it for you, and then I'm going to move on. I'd love to just slam a lawn disorder out right after this, but he said it, and then he goes on Tucker Carlson to defend it. He didn't walk it back. He trumped it. He doubled down on it. Here you go.
J.D. Vance made a pretty obvious point. He said the childless left, that's how he put it, lacks, quote, physical commitment to the future of this country. Quote, why is this just a normal fact of life for the leaders of our country to be people who don't have a personal and direct stake in it via their own offspring? That's what he asked, and they went completely bananas.
What I was basically saying is that we're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made. And so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. And it's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children. And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it? I just wanted to ask that question and propose that maybe if we want a healthy ruling class in this country, we should invest more, we should vote more, we should support more people who actually have kids, because those are the people who ultimately have a more direct stake in the future of this country. And these people recognize that they're unhappy. They live in one-bedroom apartments in New York City. They've played their entire lives to win a status game. They're obsessed with their jobs. They're obsessed with their wealth and with their fortunes. And they look at middle America, people who are actually pretty happy with their lives and the choices that they've made. And they hate normal Americans for choosing family over these ridiculous DC and New York status games. When somebody calls out that, look, if you're a miserable cat lady, you should not force your misery on the rest of the country, they just get really upset about it. You know this, Tucker. The most miserable people in the mainstream media are these mediocre journalists who have their entire sense of self-worth wrapped up in their crappy jobs instead of in their families. People who know where they came from, people who go home at night and see the face of a smiling kid, whatever their profession, I think they're happier, I think they're healthier, and they're going to be better prepared to actually lead this country.
Maybe if you two
Yeah,
weren't
that's
such
there you go. That's all I wanted you to see, because it's a remarkable thing. He said it, and then he goes on Tucker Carlson, as I say, not to walk it back, but to actually expand upon it. It's offensive in so many ways. It almost doesn't need to be taken down as the mass of BS that it is. But the notion somehow that you have to have kids to have a stake in America is completely absurd. And as they take away IVF options and some of the options for those who want to have children, it's a bizarre irony, you know. But as I was saying, there are plenty of people who don't want to have children, and that's a perfectly sound decision. And many are making many more contributions to improving American life than are those who have families. I mean, that's a cartoonish version of what a person without a family and with a person with a family really are. You had a cartoonish version, which is this miserable cat lady. It's her and her cat and the cat treats sitting on the couch in misery. That's just not the way it is. I mean, these are people who are loving life and have freedom of being by themselves. I celebrate those people. Good for them. They're not miserable in the least. They're as miserable as the many people who are miserable with families, shackled with responsibilities. You want to talk about miserable jobs? Remember, he went to a little jag about, and they're in their miserable jobs, and all they care about is, you know, how much money they make. I'll show you many people who are staying in miserable jobs because they have family to support and they have a sense of responsibility. And I applaud and respect that responsibility. But they continue in misery because their own freedoms to decide on what they're going to do with their life and their society have really been hijacked because they committed to something too soon. So you can make the argument on both sides. There are people who are miserable who are single, childless, and there are people who are miserable who have families and they're stuck in crappy jobs or crappy whatever. Neighborhoods, communities, whatever it might be. There are a million reasons why people are miserable. But I love my cat ladies. How dare you come after them? He really, really is a despicable guy. Not to mention, he essentially BS'd his way in with Hillbilly Elegy is really a great story, but it's not really completely true. So anyway, as J.D. Vance continues to be a relevant part of the conversation politically, I think there's going to be some explaining to do. And I'm sure there'll be explaining to do on the Democratic side too. But J.D. Vance really has some extreme views. And the one thing I will say is that he fits right in on the Trump train. I mean, if you're riding the hate train and you're doing an us versus them, he's just the guy for you because he's really all about us versus them. So.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, they're going to get hammered by women, said somebody, John, November 6th. I mean, definitely women are going to hopefully have their say at the ballot box. I want to thank Lucy McAllister. How about a big shout out to my favorite McAllister?
Big shout out.
And I can say it unapologetically without Kim here. Kim's got COVID. I hope she feels better soon. But Lucy, my favorite McAllister, has given me a 20. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the super sticker. West Theory, yes, with a 5 spot. What up, Wes?
Big shout
Thank
out.
you, sir. Maud Day, who can't love you? $25 super chat.
Big shout out.
A big shout out. A Chappelle, thank you. And I'd like to also add a thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yes. I don't mind my taxes going to support schools that I'll never directly use, because I don't want to be surrounded by uneducated idiots. Yeah, says somebody who doesn't have kids. Exactly. What do you mean? You're using my tax dollars to support schools, to support a lot of institutions that are designed to support children. I don't have any kids, but I understand the importance of supporting kids, other people's kids. To be continued, for sure. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell, you'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.